Okay, let's call this Community Library Network Board of Trustees regular meeting to order. The first item, first of all board members are here. And so the first item on our agenda is our Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we're going to move into public comment. We have quite a few people here today. And I'll give my little public comment to talk beforehand. So the public library is founded on the First Amendment, which is freedom of speech and freedom of assembly, and that is exactly what we're all doing here today, gathering together to freely speak. The most important things I want us all to remember today are to be respectful of one another and to be civil to one another. We may not like what someone is saying, but we all need to listen and let them say it without interruptions or distractions from the audience. Please, let's treat people as we wish to be treated when we're up there. I'm going to also read directly from our public comment, a few things directly from our public comment policy. The board is pleased to take comments under advisement. We will not be responding at the meeting. Public comment will be addressed at the next regularly scheduled meeting. And the board is committed to conducting its meetings in a civil, orderly, efficient, and productive manner. A time limit of 3 minutes is allowed for each speaker, and we have a timer. A person may speak one time during the meeting, and I want to clarify this. If you would like to, speak for someone else or whatever, that is absolutely fine, but each person gets one time up at the podium. In cases of disagreement, the speaker must use grace and tact. Persons addressing the board are expected to observe a level of civility and decorum appropriate for a board meeting. No personal attacks or disruptions from audience members will be tolerated to anyone, to staff, to board members, to anyone. And I will either terminate or redirect any presentation that doesn't adhere to these guidelines, although most of our meetings have been quite civil. So the first person to speak is Emily Christopherson.
Emily Christopherson, Post Falls. At last month's board meeting, my friend Angela Druin read a petition we had created and circulated on our own for less than a week. We have since gathered more signatures. It has grown to 145 local signatures. I ask you to consider this perspective in your future decision-making. Next, I'd like to address some statements I heard at the October meeting during public comment. One citizen was concerned you're promoting a liberal progressive agenda. I disagree, and I have facts. Searching the CIN for the specific voices she requested, I found the following: books featuring Martin Luther King Jr., 229 titles. Books featuring Thomas Sowell, 12. Books featuring Ben Carson, 30. Books featuring Condoleezza Rice, 10. Books featuring Clarence Thomas, 25. Christian as a search term, 7,109. Religious and Christianity as search terms, 1,156. Christian and Bible as search terms, 447, and Christian fiction genre, 1,977. While it's hard to define what would qualify as children's classic, I did want to present that the children and YA section has 6,645 titles published between 1800 and 1989, and 19,689 titles published between 1990 and 2012. Totaling 26,334. And if you look at the past 10 years, there's 36,847 titles in children and YA. This shows there is a balance between new releases and what some might consider classics, making the collection fair and balanced. These numbers do not reflect how many individual books are owned of each title, so if the CLN has more than one copy, these numbers would be even larger. If LGBTQ literature is less than 1% of the collection, that would mean books featuring traditional families will be 99%. I find the new releases featuring BIPOC voices meaningful for my family. I have 3 children, and they serve as a window to see life from a different perspective. The books displayed facing out in the children's area are not the library promoting a liberal agenda, but instead holiday selections and new releases coming from publishers. And you can see this by looking at the sticker date on the back. I read Braden Speaks Up, a book about a young boy with a stutter who was inspired by Joe Biden, with my son who is in speech therapy. He did not finish the book brainwashed, but instead felt inspired that he too can overcome bullying and accomplish anything despite his speech challenges. I encourage anyone in this community who feels they aren't being represented to request an interlibrary loan or put in a purchase request, ask to be represented. I've requested homeschool books from a Christian perspective often, and they're purchased. My most recent purchase was a purchase request was a homeschool. Can I just finish my sentence? It was from a Christian worldview, and when books can't be purchased, I'm emailed. I believe this proves that the library is a place for many perspectives.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I give you the petition? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, Teresa Burkett.
Good afternoon. My name is Teresa Burkett. I am a resident of Post Falls, and this library is my home library. I want to acknowledge the great work this board has done for our community and continues to do. I would like to speak about a recent video I saw that might be of interest to you. Of the library director in Meridian, Nick Grove, speaking to the public at their November library board meeting. Quote, "It is important to remind trustees, staff, and the public there are laws and rules in place on how open public meetings are to be conducted. There's a code of conduct in place. Anyone who does not abide by these will be asked to leave immediately." End quote. Mr. Grove went on to say that Idaho code does not require public comment. Therefore, their November meeting and future meetings will not include public comment. He also stated that when you visit a library, quote, "You have the right to choose books and other items your family wants to borrow. Others do not have the right to restrict your access to these items." This has been backed up in court cases across the U.S. for decades. Neither I nor the board will put the library at financial or legal risk by implementing a policy that is not only contrary to our freedom to read values, but simply will not stand up to a First Amendment challenge in court. No amount of defamation or harassment in person or online is going to change that, end quote. He went on to say they do not have any materials available to the public that are considered obscene based on the actual definition. I'm sure that is the case here at the CLN. Quote, he also said, "You have the right to object to an item. You don't have the right to ban books or segregate access to books you do not like. Everyone has the right not to read books they don't like. However, no one has the right to impose those views and limited sacred freedoms of others. Individuals and families should make their own choices on what they check out from a library," end quote. Please know myself and others here do not believe in banning books. We believe everyone has the right to read. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin George.
Kevin George, Post Falls. The reason I'm standing here is to support the institution of public libraries and the librarians and the board of directors. The thankless job they do, the service they do for our community, because without an educated and informed citizenship, our democracy cannot and will not survive. That's why countries like Iran and North Korea banned books. The Old South in the 1800s banned books for their slaves. Like Germany in the 30s banned and burned books. That wasn't enough for them. They decided to kill 11 million people after that. You know, books can represent our First Amendment to the Constitution, as you said, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of redress to our government. The library is a public institution funded by the public. You and I are all members of this public. But those who wish to ban books, I think, are in the minority. A minority that is very loud and vocal, but a minority nonetheless. You can be very loud and vocal and talk real fast about your feelings, but that doesn't make you right. We can't let the loudest voice in the room become the voice of reason. This institution should not let itself be dictated to and yield to a small minority and their wishes. Do not elevate hate and censorship and give it an even louder voice than it already has. The librarian is in charge. That power comes from the majority. So I ask, what is the hate du jour? What's the new hate of the day? You know, people have already come after Dr. Seuss, Mr. Potato Head, Ken and Barbie, The Diary of Anne Frank, authors about the Holocaust, Harry Potter, George Orwell's Black children along with white kids in math textbooks in Florida. I don't understand what they're so afraid of, because they have a difference of opinion. These books you want to ban are not being used as a substitute for a re-educational camps for your children like in China or North Korea. And there's always a caravan of immigrants coming to scare the masses, you know, and what bothers me so bad is librarians. The board of directors being threatened, never in my lifetime. But I thought librarians, I mean, we had communism and fluoride in the 50s and the domino theory leading up to the fiasco of the Vietnam War. We've had a lot of stupid things, but librarians, I'll finish with this. 6 years, can I take her time for one more minute? 6 years ago, the former president.
I think if I do that for you, I will have to do it for everyone.
All right.
So
Well,
thank you very much.
Thank you for your patience.
Yes,
and
thank you. Okay, Ruth Miller.
I yielded my time to Kevin, so.
Well, no,
Nope.
no, yeah,
Thank you. Thank you.
yeah, okay. I haven't had that before, so I need to think, I'm sorry, I haven't had that request before, and it doesn't have anything in the policy, so I'm sorry.
We're learning.
Yeah, we're learning. All right, the next person, Tom Hanley.
Madam Chair, members of the board, my name is Tom Hanley, and I'm a resident of Post Falls, and I'm a Kootenai County property taxpayer. I didn't decide to come to the meeting for sure until after lunch, so I thought I'd scribble down a couple of notes. They may not be the most organized. So at a gathering a couple of months ago, I heard there was pornography in the children's section of the library. And I thought, well, that sounds pretty extreme. I doubt it. I don't know. Is that really true? And then I attended 1, 2, or 3 meetings and many meetings online. I looked at the recordings and listening to excerpts that were read, it sounded pretty clear to me that there's pornography in the children's section. I can't say that firsthand. I wasn't in there. I didn't pick up the book, but that's what was read in here. And I was told that came out of the kids' library area. So several times I heard the board or the former library director state that there was no pornography in the children's section. And normally I associate pornography with pictures. I don't think about writing. So I looked it up. I thought, well, let me see what it says it's this very short definition in the library and in the dictionary. And it said writings, pictures, etc., intended to arouse sexual desire. Well, from what I heard read, that certainly seemed to meet that definition. That was pornography, in my opinion. So I'm just wondering, is there a shortage of decent, good, wholesome children's books? I don't know. I don't go to that section of the library, but my wife was a teacher for many years, and she said there are thousands, if not tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of good books. So my question is, why pornography in our library? Your library website links into the American Library Association, And it looked like a pretty radical organization, in my opinion. And I'm just wondering, like, is there an undue influence coming in from the American Library Association overlooking, or are people looking at here? I did take a quick glance at my file before I came out and say, what are my tax dollars are going to support the library? How much? So I pulled the property bill out, and I have over $150 a year coming out of my tax dollars to support the library system here. So I have a sort of a, I know it's not an interactive session here, so a rhetorical question is, does the library here work for the American Library Association, or do they work for the taxpayers? I don't know that. And so I do also hope that you choose wisely when you're selecting your next library director. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And Dr. Sam Lyman.
Thank you for inviting participation in the meeting today. I'm a resident of Post Falls. I've been an educator for 38 years. I'm a parent of 5 children and a stepfather of 1 and a grandparent of 2 children. In my family, who are all Idahoans, I have a son who is gay. I have a stepson who is transgender. And all of my children consider themselves allies. As a member of this community and a person who is married to a woman that is Jewish, I think it is important that everyone has a chance to be represented in our community, and that there is not a single group that gets a bigger say than any other group. And I will say, in response to that definition about pornography, as a former high school teacher of 13, 14, 15-year-old boys, pretty much anything can produce arousal in those boys. I know from experience. We live in a community that has a great deal of diversity, a growing amount of diversity from day to day as many new people come in. I think as a property owner here and as a member of the community and a regular patron of the library, I think it's important to recognize that everyone deserves a voice, that my stepson, Zach, who is transgender, should be able to come to the library and read materials that affirm who Zach is as a person, that my son Harley, who is gay, can come to the library and read materials that affirm who he is as a person. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you for putting up with us all here today and giving us a voice.
Thank you. All right, Liz Wooster.
So I just want to say thank you. I'm extremely grateful for the new material selection policy that you're going to implement. The state statutes, Idaho's codes 1513, 1514, et cetera. And we look forward to working with you to make it easier for you, because we've got lists and lists of books that fit the obscenity clause, and we'll make it very easy for you to be able to relocate those. Maybe that's a better word. No one's looking for anything to be banned. Nobody hates anybody. It's just drawing a line in the sand about sexuality and where is the line crossed, because our country is going in the wrong direction. And we want to stop it now before it starts getting books about minor attracted people, people coming up here and saying, my daughter is a minor attracted person, and we need the books to represent her, which is another word, it's a euphemism for pedophile. So we're just going to stop now and pull back a little bit. Thank you very much for the wonderful work that you've done to change the policy.
Thank you. Kara Claridge.
Well, it's been 10 days, or we're 10 days out from Christmas, and I'm sure you are all busy. And though I disagree wholeheartedly with many of you on a regular basis, I do appreciate your commitment to these 3-hour meetings, and I really do mean that as a compliment. So last month, a petition was presented to this board titled Defend the Right to Read that I've been looking over. I'm sure you've seen it. And I'm going to summarize it as follows, not word by word. The library's collection should be separated by reading level, not content. Parents may make choices for their family, but no one else. Neither the CLN nor its employees may draw conclusions regarding content, and library staff should not be criminalized for disseminating ideas. So I would just say, I don't think any librarians are going to jail, but what this kind of petition is saying to me is that anything is permissible in the children's section. Parental rights are supposedly esteemed, but really it's just leaving the door wide open for abuse. And I would say the children most at risk for abuse are the ones that are here unattended or without parental right or a good home life in general. So nobody is making a judgment call on content is what this petition seems like it's saying, which is so ridiculous. Boundaries are given to children to keep them safe and love them, and I would encourage you to move in that direction, not this direction. And I would just say, I think harm is measurable. When you have books like this, and I won't drop it, it's making a trendy appeal to a child to be a different gender than they are, which is not going to happen. So this is called Jacob's New Dress. It's, I think, about a little girl that wants to be a boy, or the other way around, I can't remember. But in any case, you go from this kind of seed planted in a children's mind to this this girl named Chloe, that her story is coming out. She basically, at the age of 9, was pulled into this kind of lifestyle, and her body is now mutilated. And so we have measurable content that's harmful to minors here. I don't mean this as a personal attack, but what are you doing? Have you forgotten the innocent makeup of a child? People get addicted to all kinds of things, but they don't get to normalize their addictions by exposing others to it. And on a personal note, though I have not struggled in this area, I have had the experience of believing a lie that nearly ended my life. And the path out of that place of torment, and I wouldn't wish torment on anybody, is a slow and painful process. And that's what you are setting up these children for. So I would just say thank you for your time and Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Mariana Cochran.
This is assuredly a well-read board, so perhaps you'll recognize this historical speech. When an opponent declares, "I will not come over to your side," I calmly say, "Your child belongs to us already. What are you? You will pass on. Your descendants, however, now stand in the new camp. In a short time, they will know nothing else but this new community." Adolf Hitler, 1933. It's ironic that those of us who stand before you month after month are considered the Nazis, when the agenda to lure children to the new camp is overwhelmingly obvious within our community library network. For over a year, a group of alarmed patrons have been pleading the case for decency regarding children's materials, and yet you deflect and deny. Chairman Blank is on record in the October meeting stating there are no pornographic materials in the library. However, at 2 separate board meetings, I've read this board in arguably pornographic passages from CLN books in the young adult section. I'll remind you of the definition of pornography from Merriam-Webster: the depiction of erotic behavior as in pictures or writing intended to cause sexual excitement. Material such as books that depicts erotic behavior and is intended to cause sexual excitement. Idaho Statute 1815-14 clearly defines obscene materials as sexual conduct and sexual excitement. It is irrefutable that CLN's collection for minors includes pornography. But despite Chairman Blake's denial, this board recently made a small but highly relevant policy revision. I'll read it. Forms of expression that are unprotected by the First Amendment will not knowingly be included in this collection. Unprotected materials are those that have been declared obscene by a U.S. court of law. Materials for minors under the age of 18 that violate Idaho Codes 1815, 13, 14, and 15 will be excluded from the juvenile and young adult collections. So despite the glaring loopholes, that's a first step. The next step is a sweeping reevaluation of the present collection and revisions regarding CLN's materials acquisition criteria and processes. I'm no longer on Facebook, but you could still find my public posts beseeching voter support for the last CLN library tax levy. I'd exclaimed at the library's features and events and their value to the community, and I voted to raise my own taxes for it. Well, those bonds and levies will expire eventually, and voter support will be needed again. However, many of us are awake now to the blatant agenda being propagated on kids by CLN and Coeur d'Alene libraries. So unless this cesspool of poison for kids is corrected with actual changes to the collection, you can count on broadcast messaging to the public to be defund the libraries. We will fight publicly against every funding request until these changes are made. Follow-up is my strong suit. You will be held to account for the policy changes you committed to regarding materials for minors. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt Yetter.
Good afternoon. My name is Matt Getter. I was born here at KMC, and I am also retired Army. I have 5 kids, and my 12th grandchild is due in January. Around 9 years old, I was exposed to porn by finding a Playboy, and I still remember those images. I also remember reading all those stories over and over. At 18, I joined the military and I was sent to Germany, where the beer was great and the sex shops were everywhere. As an initiation into my first unit, they took us to the red light district where prostitution was legal. It was even an acceptable job for some women. I spent 9 years overseas and developed some really poor habits. When I was back in Idaho and finished with the Army, the internet was now in full swing and I was able to access porn. I was able to find websites where I could hook up with people, but eventually I was arrested for being with a minor. While I was in jail, I began to reflect on where my life had gone wrong. I thought I was just a normal, good guy, but my surroundings would suggest otherwise. I spent a lot of money on counseling and classes, and even later my charges were vacated and dismissed. As I was able to understand what had happened and started me down this trail, I realized that what trauma was. Trauma isn't just what happens to you, it's what happens in you. I recognized that exposure to porn early on in life had opened a door that I did not know how to close. As time went by, I was hired by a local church to run a recovery program, and I was able to work with thousands of men and women who had addictions. So for about 10 years, I interviewed couples. I interviewed a couple thousand men who struggled with some type of porn or sex addiction. And 99% of them disclosed early exposure to porn, and most of them before the age of 10. Here are some stats. The average exposure to porn before smartphones was 11. Currently, it's about 8 years old. Every second, 28,000 users are watching porn. Every second, $3,000 is spent on porn. Every second, 372 people type an adult search in. Every day, 37 pornographic videos are created and 2.5 billion emails are sent. Every day, $265,680,000 are spent on porn. 78% of men and 40% of women admit to viewing porn at least once a month. I'm not saying remove all the books from the library. I am saying that we need to put books that contain pornographic descriptions and languages and pictures in the correct sections. And we need to modify the library cards so kids don't have access to those. As a parent, I realize that I can't keep my children from being exposed to porn, but I can continue to prepare them to understand what happens in them and what they'll do with it. I hope that you'll do the same. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Suzanne Kearney.
I'm Suzanne Kearney and I live in Post Falls. I want to address the issue of bias in the CNLN catalog. The choices available to minors regarding sexuality are heavily weighted to encourage early sexual activity in kids. To set the stage for my discussion of the catalog, let me present a few statistics on early sexualization of minors. According to the Heritage Foundation, 1 out of 4 sexually active teens, or about 8,000 per day, will contract an STD. Teenage girls who become pregnant abort at a rate of nearly 1 out of 3, and those who become mothers have, quote, an extremely high probability of long-term poverty and welfare dependence, end quote. In addition, quote, when compared to teens who are not sexually active, teenage boys and girls who are sexually active are significantly less likely to be happy and more likely to feel depressed and are significantly more likely to attempt suicide, end quote. The study further states that early sexual activity leads to decreased marital and relational stability. So then, let's follow the science. Early sexuality in teens is incredibly harmful. Now to the library catalog. I searched the word purity and got 92 hits, only about 10 of which were actually related to sexual purity. A very small handful of books encourage teens to wait for marriage, but I also got these titles. #Church2, How Purity Culture Upholds Abuse and How to Find Healing. And You Are Your Own, A Reckoning with the Religious Trauma of Evangelical Christianity. What kind of message would a teen deciding whether or not to have sex for the first time get from searching the CLN catalog? I also searched for abstinence. I got 19 results, only 2 of which actually applied. Not a lot there, but the list did include the book, Taking Responsibility, A Teen's Guide to Contraception and Pregnancy. That sounds to me much more like a manual on how to than how not to. Next, I typed and searched for LGBTQ and got 460 results. For those of you who struggle with math, that's over 4.5 times the number of titles about purity. Do tell who's requesting all these books, the librarians or the teens. Why are you disproportionately equipping our teens to be queer rather than pure? Why are people claiming that we need to be more inclusive? Based on the demographics of our community, the sexual left is substantially overrepresented and by several orders of magnitude. I did request the classic title, Passion and Purity by Elizabeth Elliot to start the scales moving back to the direction of balance, but my request was denied. It's a beautiful story of waiting for marriage, but I guess that's not very important. I wonder if I had requested Passion and Sodomy, if that would have been filled. And by the way, to address the first speaker who was trying to rebut my comments from October, my issue was about what's on display in the children's library, not what is in the catalog. And if the things are on display are the new orders, then why are there no conservative orders being represented? Thanks.
And other agreements.
I'm gonna set a timer for myself starting now. Thank you for hearing me. I say everything that I say in respect, and I appreciate the board's work with the library. I want to address the library's mission statement, that is empower discovery. And this is specifically regarding the 12 to 18-year-old section. Empower discovery would be presenting numerous viewpoints and in a way that achieves equality. Indoctrination is pushing one viewpoint above all others, which results in brainwash. Unfortunately, the displays, this is one display, numerous displays, we've come in here numerous times. This is a display at the Hayden Library. The 6 of these books are LGBTQ themed books. 2 of them are demonology and demonology books and occult. That is more than half of those books. The only 2 books that have an equal opposing theme of heterosexual teen romance is 2. The rest are fantasy. So that seems to me like indoctrination. I want to give the library an example of what empowering discovery actually looks like from my own life. And hopefully the library can apply this to their displays that they have. A time in my life when I was actually empowered to discover who I was in my 20s. I actually struggled with same-sex attraction. And at that very same time, I was introduced deeper into the Christian doctrine and faith. I was introduced to the idea of one man, one woman, a man who loves his wife the way Jesus Christ loved the church and gave himself for it sacrificially. A woman who honors and respects and reveres her husband the way that we honor and respect, revere Jesus Christ as Christians. That sounded beautiful to me. Because I was introduced to that, I was able to later on be married. I don't have homosexual attraction anymore. That's something God healed me of. I'm married to my husband, happily married. I married a man who waited 2 years and 8 months to kiss me on the lips. We never went past that physical line when we got married. I am married to an excellent man. I am married to a man that prays with me every single night. We have not missed a night that we pray together. My husband opens the car door for me. He treats me like a princess. If I open my own door, I get chastised. I'm not supposed to open my own door because I am a princess. Now, if I was not introduced to a viewpoint that was opposite, I would not be where I am at today. That may not be the path that everyone wants to take, but our youth deserve to be exposed If the library is about the First Amendment and empowering discovery, then the library needs to empower discovery by exposing our youth to all viewpoints in equal and opposing viewpoints in an equal way. And the library needs to do that. Otherwise, you are disenfranchising our youth and their discovery of who they really are. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that completes our public comment portion for today. So the next, thank you all for coming, and you're welcome to stay and listen to the rest of the board meeting, but we will not be interacting with the public. So then, we were gonna have, to the board members, we were gonna have our communications, director's annual report, but she is not able to be here today. Is that right? Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Madam Chair, we
Yeah.
can do it another time.
Will she be able to do
It
it?
will be postponed probably until summer.
Because she is on,
It's a personal issue.
okay.
But that's fine, just so we don't go back over it. Thank you.
Okay. So, the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. And I have for you to guys to have, yeah,
The Madam Chair,
Have
can I
at
have
it.
a motion first, or shall we, I guess you do a motion first. and
you
then
don't have to, either way works just fine. You can do discussion. First,
I have a few things on
all right,
the minutes.
sounds good.
Community, let's see, Tuesday 15,
These are on the minute.
yes, okay, November 15th.
Then?
22, Tuesday. On page 1, the very last line, the community that is only separately by reading level, or I'm sorry, reading,
Should be reading.
yeah, a separate, only separated, I believe.
And that should be.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, two
There's
things, yeah, two.
stuff there. And then, are you ready?
That's Tuesday the 15th.
On page 3, again, at the bottom, third line to the bottom where it says Robinson, it says Robinson asked about staff wages, ... And it stuck out because that's what this whole, it was a study on staff and staff wages. And I had asked if the staff was aware of compression and how they felt about it.
How should we modify that?
Robinson asked if staff was aware of compression and how they felt about it.
That would be a correction, wouldn't it?
And then, so is the CIN income statement, that's part of this as well?
That's part of that's part of the consent agenda,
Right,
yes.
okay. Do you want me to see if anybody else has something on the minutes, or do you want me to keep going?
No, just go ahead.
Okay. Oh, I was wondering why Mango wasn't renewed.
Sure, we just show declining usage, and it's just not something that was of interest to keep subscribing to.
Okay, so same as like Freegal, you guys are kind of checking, okay.
Yes.
And then also, the local courier is 68,000 a year. What exactly, is that just the person that drives books back and forth?
That is the courier for all of CIN, yes. So they do drop our books, our program kits, everything off at all the libraries within CIN.
That's all the libraries within CIN. How many libraries are in CIN?
Approximately 20.
Okay, so it's,
Does it include gasoline, transportation costs, or driving?
I mean, that's the entire cost that we pay.
So that's mileage cost. Consumption cost. Thank you.
Okay. I don't have a question in that one, but I don't see it.
I'll take.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
No, go ahead.
No, I'm done.
Or just a minute, come back.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I had a question on Friday, November 4th. Special meeting minutes. page 1. And I think it's just after the Pledge of Allegiance executive session, Ray moved to go into executive session. Then she moved and carried by Cree, and then she also voted aye, but there's no Meyer in there to vote. Whereas later on, I voted to go out of executive session. So I think that we just modify it to, which one do you want to be? Do you want to be the motion maker or the?
Judy?
Yeah.
You arrived after the executive session had voted. Came in right after.
And therefore I could vote to leave, but I couldn't vote to enter it.
Correct.
That, okay, thank you. And I had one other one, which was minutes of the CIN meeting, August 22nd.
17?
CIN meeting minutes, there's August 17th, yeah, I see that. And that must have been at the bottom of the page where it says no meeting in August, but these are the minutes of August? Am I reading that right?
Oh. We can note that to them. It is not within our
That's right.
purview to change it.
That's fair, and I think what I saw later was we met again.
We
They skipped
can,
September, didn't they?
right, we can, note that, and when we
Yeah.
have our meeting in January, talk to them about that.
Because in fact, they didn't meet in August, they did meet in November, or they didn't meet in September. Anyway, you'll clean that up. Thank you.
You don't meet every month. CIN does not meet every month, do they?
They take periodic breaks, so like we're not
Okay.
meeting in December, and then
Okay.
we didn't meet in September.
Okay, okay,
Thank you. That completes my question.
okay. Anything else, Virginia?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have a few typos. All of mine are from the regular meeting minutes of November 15th. Under the public comment section on page 1, where there's the record of what Michelle Lippert addressed. On the second line, her family helped move books. There's just an extra D. I believe that's probably what was intended to appear there. And then the last sentence of that same section regarding the same speaker, the board, it starts out the board's job to ensure, and I think it should read the board, apostrophe S. The board's job is, add an is there, the board's job is to ensure the library has a diverse, rich collection. The one at the bottom of the page, we've gotten that. And then moving over to page 3, this is just a question under the carry forward discussion. Our director noted that some staff positions remained vacant for 12 or more months. Is that accurate? We had vacancies, some positions vacant for in excess of 12 months.
I mean, we had the administrative assistant position vacant for quite some time. Do you know exactly how long? I can't answer that it was 12 or more months, but I could find out.
Yeah,
There were YS positions that we were unable to fill for more than 12 months.
okay, thank you. I wanted to understand that because I think it's probably relevant.
Do you need Lindsay to find out more information?
No,
Okay.
no, I don't. I just think it helps it helps us understand the carry forward because I just wasn't sure if that was accurate. Maybe an extra one got put in there. I mean, 12 months is a long time to have a vacant position. Underneath the compensation study at the bottom of the page, is it Melena? Is that how you say her name? Okay. Where Melena was speaking to us, let's see, 1, 2, 3, the fourth line down, where it says this wages ranges. I think it should say wage ranges within categories. Can we just strike the S from wage? And then over halfway down, under the discussion about another type of compression, maybe this wasn't confusing to anyone else, but the phrase within the same class and staff with longevity are not making enough more than a new staff member. I found that extremely confusing, and I would suggest that it read positions within the same class and staff with longevity do not make tremendously more than a new staff member. At least that's how I understood compression, right? So what we're trying to say here, positions within the same class and staff with longevity do not make tremendously more than a new staff member. Would that be accurate?
That is, yes.
I'm gonna wait for Janelle. The very 2 lines down, she did not look in depth. I think the sentence should end there. She did not look in depth, period. New sentence, however, if we could capitalize however.
Where was that last one?
Sorry, so we were
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up.
1, 2, 3, 4th line up from the bottom. She
Oh.
did not look in depth, period. However, the district is at the higher end. There's just sort of like a run-on sentence, just goes on too long. Those were all the changes that I have, and I will go ahead and move that we accept the consent agenda with changes noted.
Okay, it's been moved to accept the consent agenda with changes noted. Any more discussion?
There's something I wanted to say. I am so glad that Rochelle brought up having pictures, the little thumbnail pictures of the different librarians, and thank you for whoever actually puts those in, because that was a surprise and helpful. And also, it's nice to see that the staff is putting that they're showing that they're following the strategic plan, following and implementing. I like how it's actually spelled out on these reports. So that's really nice.
I agree. Even though I know who most of these people are, I thought having a picture of them was great. The other comment I have about the board reports is this section from outreach, the report from outreach where they're going to some of the senior facilities and holding the digital open houses is phenomenal. I mean, just this past weekend, I was trying to show my mother-in-law how to upload photos and get actual prints made, and for people that don't have family regularly visiting them and helping them with their digital devices, I just think that's wonderful. So bravo.
All right, any more? Okay, it's been moved, is that right? No more, okay. It's been moved to accept the consent agenda with changes noted. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is the Community Library Network November 2022 financial statement. Anybody have discussion on that?
Madam Chair, can I go back a minute? Are the library reports online?
We'll talk about that in a minute.
Oh, okay.
So we will,
I
yeah,
think they're so exciting. How do we share them? All right, I'll wait.
okay. So back to the financial statements. Discussion, I have a few things. Anybody have any questions they want answered or anything?
It was helpful to Janelle's dialogue
It
on
always is,
how things are happening
right?
or why, or what you're gonna do with them. Thank you.
So I do have a question.
What page are you in?
Front page, it's under salaries, and it's, I'm asking about line 23. We're at 16.6%, 16.67% of the year. And we spent a little bit more than that in salaries and wages. Now, typically I wouldn't care. But 1% of what we spend for salaries and wages is real different than 1% of, I don't know, internet access. So is that a trend that's going to be happening since we're so early in the year that we're looking at, we are not.
Let me see if I can help
Okay.
explain that.
Okay.
So, for example, line 17, which is the salaries line, which is above expectation, that was due to payout of an employee's accrued vacation. So that was a one-time expense. And our employment taxes on line 22, that is paid quarterly, and the premiums for workers' comp went up more than expected. So I do not anticipate that this will be a trend. These are one-time events or things that can be made up differently through salary savings and things like that.
Good. Like I said, I wouldn't care in other categories, but this one's a big one.
Right.
So,
Did that answer your question?
yes, that was perfect. That was perfect. And I had one more, under legal and professional. Line 70. I had it circled, but I'm like,
35.
all right. Maybe I actually kind of know why that is like that. We've had some unexpected expenses at that line.
Right, like, the beginning of the recruitment for the director
Yes.
position, and then, we'll also, I believe it's next month, we'll see the final payment for McGrath Consulting.
Okay,
So there are expenses, but then that's also part of the carry forward conversation to help cover those.
okay, good. That sounds good. Those were my 2 questions.
Okay.
Yes.
On line 32, internet access, like you, I went down the column and anything over 16. I put mark by, and this is a 20%-ish. This is line 32, internet access,
I think I had a feeling that,
20%.
So line 32 and 33, we do have in the carry forward discussion. And that was, we were very excited to get, our E-rate in wave 1. And when we, finalized the budget, we neglected to include 3 months at the end of our fiscal year. That is not E-rates year. So, July, August, and September, we had to go back and request in the carry forward discussion to finish that. So if the carry forward passes, then you'll see that amount change.
all right, anybody else? Any other questions? Then I would entertain a motion.
I move that we accept the financial statement, November 2022.
Okay, it's been moved to accept the, community library and Elker financial statement for November 22. Is that okay? Yeah. All right, any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? That's good. Okay, the next item on the agenda is circulation statistics.
Yes, our circulation statistics year to date for actual circulation of items were up about 9%. And that's also the same for the number of visitors that we for year to date. And our number of new cards is staying steady compared to last year. So we're doing good, we're busy, but we're not dying, the busyness. So it's looking good. Any questions?
It seems like there was a comparison to pre-pandemic. What was there? Like a comparison with, like, say, 2019?
Are you asking for something like that, or?
Yeah, or does it already exist? Because I'm just trying to remember.
No, we haven't done that in any kind of official capacity.
Okay.
If it's something that the board's interested in, we can look further into that, but we just compare year to date last year and this year.
Okay, yeah, something like that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to make sure that got written down. All right, anything else? Okay, anything else that anybody has that they would like to talk about circulation? We are up. that's good. We continue to be steadily up, it looks like each month, which is great.
And again, Madam Chair, then would comment, for me to look at the total line, where you do comparison of last year's circulation with this year's, both for year to date, in both places were up, which to me is the criteria I use. And Rochelle, I was thinking about your comment about when COVID, because we know things were impacted. And this doesn't show it completely because COVID is beginning a transition a year from now, so for comparison purposes. But I don't know. Did you want to find more numbers for COVID comparison? Or are you okay with where we are?
No, I was just thinking, something to compare where we were at in 2019 for like year-end totals and right here.
The other one I use for barometer is the meeting rooms. And of course, meeting rooms weren't used then. And so what I'm seeing here is there's growth since COVID has lessened for the meeting room numbers now compared to before, a year ago. Again, growth is happening. Meeting rooms are being able to be used and they are.
And I'll just say that I am leery of having our success at the library judged solely on numbers. So
Yeah.
this is like one part of the story, but the other part of the story are the personal connections, the impact we're having on the community. So while it's amazing to highlight how we are growing, I don't want that to be negative when we aren't growing, let's say next year or something like that. So I just want a full picture of where we're at.
A good point, because to me, it's the library reports, the books, the reports we have in the staff that help me understand what's all going on. And we don't always have numbers about how many little kids, well, we do have some about how children attended or so on. But just that programs are reaching out to various groups, and I know we've been focusing on adults and so on. And so it's one of many things we need to use to get a big picture look. And it's right back to this was suggested, what are our tax dollars buying each year? It isn't just bodies in the door. It's that participation in programs and ideas, input from the public on what they would like us to do more of, so we can do it. Thanks.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, I think the report is helpful from a trends perspective, and I always keep the one that I know is the fiscal year end, and so I can go back and look at them. I also appreciate that it's only one page, so I don't know exactly.
Tiny print.
Well, yeah, it is tiny print. I don't know exactly what it is you're gonna go and pull for Rochelle, but I'm assuming it's not gonna be something that's continuously added to this report. You're just going to provide her with an additional, maybe the fiscal year end or something for the year that we had, shortened operations or not less than normal conditions possibly. Because, yeah, when you get too much data on this sheet, it gets a little harder to decipher.
Okay. My understanding of what you asked for would be something pre-COVID that looks exactly like this. Like if we took this, is that what you asked for?
Yeah, or it could even just be the actual sheet from 2019.
That's what I was thinking, is that it would just be that. I wasn't thinking she was asking for something real complicated, and that would be an interesting sheet to look at if it were available.
Yeah, and that's why I commented that I purposefully kept mine for each fiscal year.
Okay, so Regina, why don't you?
That's my record.
And you're amazing. Okay, all right, I just wanted to be clear that, because that's what I thought. I thought that would be an interesting thing to look at as well. Where are we in comparison to where we were when, right before COVID started, I mean. Okay, if there's nothing else on the circulation report, okay. The next item on the agenda is the director's report.
So these 3 to 4 weeks have been very intense and like absorbing so much from Amy and leaning on Janelle and other managers. But I'm also really enjoying it and having fun. But Michelle, said something about how thrilled she was to see that last paragraph about having no vacant positions, which has been really nice, like these last, I'd say like 6 weeks or so, we haven't had any postings and, that's been a really big gift, but I have to say that we yesterday added 2 jobs and then we have the director's job. So we did have a period of a few weeks where we didn't have any jobs. But I am just looking forward to, continuing to lead the organization and focus on staff and focus on helping serve the board and, guiding us through the strategic plan. So I think that's about it.
Questions, comments?
Just a comment about the thanks for the stability. I know that it's not your career goal at this moment, but we're glad you're there. I think right now, just staying stable is an admirable accomplishment. While we all regroup on how we're gonna get, and we're in active search to find someone else along the way. And tending to the staff we have is important, so thank you for that.
So I have a question because my understanding historically, the assistant director handles quite a bit of the hiring, correct? Okay.
That is correct.
Okay, so just because you've stepped into and are handling the interim director roles, your duties as assistant director don't go away necessarily, right? So,
Correct.
so correct me if I'm wrong, but you're basically having to do both the jobs of 2 people.
That is correct. But as far as like recruitment and hiring and things like that, that's something that I absolutely adore doing. And so prior to assuming this role, we have worked with Janelle and with Michelle actually to get Michelle trained to help be a second or third person on some of the interview teams. So the workload is being shared, and then there will be some that I definitely want to still have my hand in with hiring. So, but it's just deciding what is the priority for today and then doing that and trying not to let the other things fall. So.
Well, thank you very much, Lindsay. I appreciate
Thank you.
the difficult task that you've been set to. I don't recognize Michelle, and maybe she could tell us who she is and which library. It's her home.
Yes, so Michelle is our newly hired, she worked at Post Falls as a circulation specialist. And then she transitioned over to our administrative assistant. But I don't know if you want to talk loudly and introduce yourself or.
Sure. Hi, my name is Michelle Fansler. I have a bachelor's degree in business administration. I had 3 years of experience in human resources right out of college. And then I worked for 20-some years for financial advisors doing the paperwork for the New York Stock Exchange. So I love math and I love human resources. I worked as a circulation specialist because I was stepping back into a career. I had to take a 10-year break to survive cancer. And so circulation specialist was an opportunity to get my stamina back up. And I saw the position for administrative assistant. I knew I was a good fit, but I was having so much fun as a circulation specialist. I wasn't ready to apply yet. And then finally, after 9 months, I felt like I kind of got the idea of the whole library as a circulation specialist and decided it was time to get back into my career and applied. And I absolutely love it. It's my favorite job I've ever had.
Excellent. Welcome.
Welcome. Anybody else?
Just commendation, you all are speaking in sentences and paragraphs. That's good. That's been a challenge for you, I'm sure.
Okay, anything else? Good, or any more questions? Okay, sounds good. The next item on the agenda, as I looked at it today, I thought, oh, really, this really belonged under the trustee continuing education follow-up with Jim McNall. I can talk about it now, or I can wait till then. I guess what I'd like to do is wait until it really does go under the follow-up with Jim McNall. And so,
Where do we slide it to?
just down to the under trustee and continuing education.
Okay. Which one? The board packet?
Board packet discussion, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so the next thing is, the compensation plan follow-up. And there are, I think that this was a good idea, but this was initially, requested by, Regina. So would you like to start, Regina, with some of your questions concerning it?
Or, I'm trying, it's like,
I know.
I'm trying to remember where I was in November and why I wanted to follow up. So I'm sure as more as I talk about it, it'll come to me. I think what I just didn't want it to fall off our radar, two things. The first, when McGrath did the study, they came back to us with not only salary suggestions, but it seemed to me there were also job categories, job descriptions, job titles, and that's not the purview of the board. That I think is the purview of staff in some regards to say, actually, we like this title just how it is, or if there were going to be some changes that would be implemented. I just didn't want it to be confusing because I think the appendix that the board adopted contained both the title as it was and the title as McGrath had possibly suggested that we change to. So I feel like at some point, we might want to clean that up or just at least have clarity as to were any additional changes going to be made. And along those lines, I think that just kind of, the work is not finished. We know the work is not finished when it comes to compensation, but I think the work also isn't finished when it comes to job descriptions, which I know when Amy came on, part of her onboarding, at least when I went and sat down and talked with her was, some of these job descriptions, they need updated and they need gone through. And I'm sure that that's a huge process, but it is in Idaho code. I think that if any changes are made, the board has to approve those changes. So I think that was, for me, why I wanted it on the agenda was just to make sure that those things continue to be on our radar.
Go ahead. Do you have anything to?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely received that salary schedule with the current job descriptions and the recommended job descriptions. And I do see that there would be worth in exploring that. And, there's history as to why certain job titles are what they are here. And that is something that I'm learning. And I believe that we could move forward with updating some of these, but there's also going to be a ripple effect. So like if you change library assistant to page and change library specialist to library assistant, then, what does that look like for the rest of the organization? And then what does that look like for staff? Like how will that impact their morale and things like that? So it's something that we need to look into, but I also want to be sensitive to staff who are going through a lot of change right now and work on that when it is appropriate to do so.
Yeah, that makes sense because just because McGrath made these suggestions in the report, I guess that was kind of my point. I don't know if they're actually going to be implemented and it would be nice to have some sort of reporting back. Okay. Even if the reporting back is, we like things, we like things how they are.
That sounds good. That sounds fair. So.
And I had the same thought on last meeting, we approved it, but how's it going is part of what I think we'll want to learn back from you. We've had feedback from one staff member who's had some concerns. Did you need to come back to the board with something else? Are you dealing with that? And how was it received by the staff? This was finally done. We knew it wasn't everything we wanted, but it was a start. Is that comforting to the staff or is it annoying because we didn't do more? You probably can't answer that. Go ahead.
It was, I would say overall positive, but there was a mixed reaction. And I first of all want to acknowledge Janelle because she did such tremendous work with like figuring out the back page for October and just getting everything updated. So that was a massive undertaking. And I believe staff had plenty of advanced understanding of maybe what to be expecting. And so it wasn't too much of a surprise. But some people feel like maybe we could have done better, but we did the best we could with the limitations we're facing. So overall, some of the staff were getting $2 to $3 raises, and that's really big, and that it was very well appreciated. And I received that feedback from managers and staff that they were quite happy. But then there's also the other feedback, but there's not a ton of that, so.
To follow up then too, that, because certainly an issue we've had over the last couple of years, and you alluded to it, was retaining the staff we have. And that costs us a whole lot more bringing new staff than it does to hang on to the good ones that we have. And so hopefully this helps make that happen. And I think it reflects what we as a board wanted to have happen, was say, we need stability. We know the whole marketplace is crazy. Now we've done a sanity check with resource people, consultants, to say, this area is okay, but we're really weak here. And we think we've identified those spots and begun to launch that process. But it doesn't mean the board is done thinking about it, and that we need to have continued input. I would welcome input from near every meeting on how's it going? What are you seeing from what we thought it was going to be to what it really is? And that gets us ready for another round of budgeting. That's every month we're doing new budgeting because we know what's ahead. So I was glad to see it on the agenda, and I don't mind even having on the agenda, as you see, you need to update us on is it really working? And tune us up for what we need to do with the budgeting that we're going to be doing.
Anybody else? I'd like to say two things, or a few things, actually. I think it's important for us to remember and for staff to remember as well, that this was a market range study. And so not everybody was out, not all job positions were out of market range. And so some people saw a very large increase and other people saw a standard 3%. And that may not have been what they thought, but we did have an outside, well thought of firm look at what was in market range based upon job descriptions and what was out. So that's part of it. The second thing is that with Regina's motion to accept that, we have a commitment starting this next budget round to look at implementing the full compensation package. And so that's our commitment for this next year, is we will be looking at it. Whether we will be able to do it, I don't know, but that is our commitment. And lastly, I would like to say that in the brochure that we put out for the library director, under the looking ahead, which we looked at really carefully, the second bullet point is analyze staffing allocations and classifications to determine whether a different mix of full-time and part-time staff would better service the districts. So that would be not exactly answering your question, but it's close to it. So that is an expectation that we're moving forward. The interim plan was definitely a first step. There's more work to be done.
Yeah, and I was hopeful that might have been a component of the McGrath study, but it's in the minutes that when I asked for clarification on that, that they did not look at the ratio of part-time, full-time allocation, and the board has heard feedback from staff, I think, for several years possibly to review that. So yeah, more work is needed, and we recognize that and we understand that.
It might have been a frugal decision not to look at the whole thing.
Yeah, and it's probably not years. I think if it came out of the staff interviews that our recruiter, June Garcia, conducted when we had to do the director search the last go round, that was important to staff. It was identified during the director search. So it's not been years because we didn't have Amy for years. So there you are.
Okay, another follow-up on that.
Yeah.
The discussion helps bring back to me too. The other thing I think we as a board are learning and our staff is educating us to is that libraries are changing and what they do and the kind of skills we need. We've been off on the technology end of things, which is good, but that also affects both your job descriptions and therefore the salaries that people are going to need to have to keep the good folk here. And technology world is one of the more expensive ones, but that isn't the only one. It's just as we look at how best to serve were they members or patrons now?
It's interchangeable, Judy.
Thank you. The member patrons that we have, what does our marketplace want from libraries? And that should be the one that I think you staff bring back to us with, we need more of this, we need less of that, the juggling, and it's ongoing. Any business should be doing that kind of assessment. How are we serving the taxpayers? And what are we learning from it? And what do we adapt to? So the nimbleness is important, but sometimes it costs money to keep up with that.
Okay, anything else anybody wants to ask on compensation plan follow-up? All right. The next item on the agenda is the carry forward proposal. This has already been presented to you with Amy, and I'm gonna make a few comments first. Okay, so we ended up, for reasons that she explained, with a carry forward. And this is with a very large carry forward. And then, so this is how the staff sees that carry forward, how this, on the proposal, this is how the budget would be changed in these ways. And we've already looked at this now, and we can look at it again today. What we need to do is, look at it, come to some consensus or whatever, and then we would have the staff would build a new budget, and we would have another budget hearing, and that would be at 5:30 at the end of January's regular meeting, and to approve the new budget. That would include this. So what we're looking at is taking that carry forward money and adding it to the budget that we have, that we approved in August. Does that make sense to you guys? We did this last year, that we did this very same thing. And we can go down the list if you guys would like, and would you like to address the issues as we look at them?
Has anything changed from the last?
Nope, I don't think anything has changed.
No, nothing has changed. It's the same as November.
And for clarification purposes, this carry forward proposal only covers us for carrying it forward for this budget this year.
Yeah, we have to change this budget this year.
Right, because we've just been talking about, we'll be budgeting, as we do every meeting, for what's gonna come up next year. And I remember asking, I think the minutes show, saying, this amount of money, we can do everything we need, not everything. The critical things you're recommending to us, we can do within these numbers for this year.
There were a few things that we talked about during the financial report that was like, okay, what were the things that we highlighted there? So, we changed it in the carry forward.
We could, internet access and telecom were issues that were addressed. And Janelle and I are gonna work on this together, so. I don't know if you have something else to say about.
Just the proposal is the same that was addressed in November. And in November, we did talk about the internet and telecom. And it's listed, right in there. There's not much else to add unless you have questions about it.
And I do there to know, because in the note here, internet access, it says the E-rate only is approved through July. And that's where you said you just got
So
worked on that.
the E-rate year is July 1 to June 30. Our fiscal year is October 1 to September 30. So there's that July, August, September that we haven't even applied for E-rate yet for that July, August, September to even know if we'll be lucky to be in the first wave again.
So the worst case budgeting is we don't get it.
And we budget for the full amount for
And
July,
that's what
August,
this
September.
is.
That's what that is.
That's what this is making sure that the full amount is budgeted for those months. Just in
Worst
case
case,
E
thank
rate
you.
thing.
And if the rebate money does come in, then we have extra money, right?
To bump over to the next July.
That's what I'm really looking forward to. Thank you. But we have covered this year. That's the responsibility of the board is, but the costs that we know are coming up, we have plans to cover with this. Good.
Okay,
And I believe the other item that was talked about were the salaries and benefits from earlier. So I think, there's a question of, using carry forward for salaries and benefits, and is that sustainable? And the short answer is that yes, it is sustainable for future years, but it will be the board's decision and how that is managed. So when we, are ready to determine the actual budget for fiscal year 24, we'll be needing to look and see, what percentage of our expenditures are salaries and benefits. And then you all will need to decide where you want to go with this. And so that's how this is sustainable. And that's how moving to the next step of the recommended minimum is sustainable.
we had looked at a percentage of, salaries and wages. But that wasn't, cast in bronze, that percentage. We weren't measuring at all, and it gave us a way to measure, the percentage of our salaries and wages to our full budget. And, we've always been substantially, percentage-wise, substantially below what typical, service-oriented agencies are in terms of salaries and budgets. So we may have to look at the percentages that we were using before and say, are they really realistic for this business? But I think that there's been a misconception that those were, rigidly placed, and we will never go beyond them. They were, as far as I was ever concerned, a way to measure. We were not measuring it at all before. And they were just simply, are our salaries staying within this percentage of the full budget? And, so that will be an item that we'll talk about. We'll have to talk about, because the compensation study was, I think, rather breathtaking for all of us to see how out of market range this library has been for quite a while.
And Katie, if I could say something, I did do a little research to see what other libraries, what percent of their budget is salaries. And so the data that I could find was from 2018. And in Idaho Public Libraries as a whole, it's 66.3% is spent on salaries. And then in Ada County, it's 67.9.
And Ada County is the state capital and Treasure Valley, and that's a tougher marketplace, a more expensive place, yeah.
And Meridian is 70.5, and Twin Falls is 69.4.
And Lindsay, are these comparable kinds of satellite operation libraries?
What I went through and looked for ones that have a similar budget to ours.
Okay,
And so that's why I pulled those specific
Good.
libraries.
thank you.
Okay.
And more data can be found when we get ready to have that conversation.
And what's our percentage for 2023?
60, oh, for 2023. Hold on, what I know is what Bob Fish recommended was 63%.
Because I know we talked about these percentages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think Katie's right when we described, we as the board need to think of these percentages as guidelines. They aren't frozen into place. It's a bit of a sanity check. What's the marketplace doing? How can we be competitive enough in our salaries to bring in the very best staff we need and want to have, and provide the benefits that we want them to have? The community college is usually in the lower 70s percentage. Education world is faintly, but I think you're getting statistics for what's happening here in Idaho, and then also in Spokane, because that's our competition, not Boise, for employees. And then nationwide too, because what we hear with the economy is we don't know quite what it's gonna do next. And so again, we're gonna have to be ready to respond both to our local situation and the national and international economy.
Our percentage that we tried to look at, we have tried to look at is been between 60 and 63%. So we're considerably lower than even what Idaho as a whole is paying right now. So it's important to keep that in mind, you know, we can, as we look at this.
And that's what budgeting is all about, is priorities for folks that are, you know, if we don't have staff, it doesn't matter what collection we have, if we don't have staff that can really help the public use their library. So that'll be a juggling operation we do every year. And sometimes when you juggle, the ball falls down and hits you on the head.
Thanks, Judy, that's really great.
So Katie, do you need a motion to set a budget hearing following the next regular meeting?
I don't know if budget hearings are required to have a motion, because we don't have a motion to.
So it's just because the agenda says action item.
All right, well, let's do that then.
I don't know, that's why I was asking you if you needed a motion.
That sounds like a good idea.
I don't, you know.
We do need it to be an action item and we need to be able to publish it.
Oh, okay.
Well, so you want it to follow our January regular meeting?
That was my suggestion. Now, last time we did a budget hearing, we ended our meeting at 5 and then we had to wait around for a while. So my suggestion is 5:30. Or you could do 6 if you wanted, but we can't go any earlier if we put it into a.
Well, I was gonna do something really radical and say 5:15.
Yeah, except for the fact that sometimes we go over, remember, like every time.
Then in the January meeting, I don't know if we'll be talking about dates, but I can't do that. No, the potential hires for the directors. I don't know if that's part of that meeting, because that might.
No, most of the recruitment thing probably will be they'll probably be special subjects.
Okay, well, I move that we set a budget hearing for January 19, 2023 at 5:30.
Okay, it's been moved to set a budget hearing for January 19, 2023 at 5:30 PM. Just to be clear. Is there any discussion on that?
Only in the terms of that's a meeting I will not be able to attend. I don't think you can have a budget hearing without having the full board there. I'll be out of town that date.
Oh, okay, so that might mean that we would want to change the January meeting
If you want to
begin
do
with.
it together.
I will postpone my motion till we get to talking about setting special and regular meetings. Should we do that?
Okay, or we can, yeah, that's probably a good idea. Let's do that. All right, we're gonna postpone that.
That's a good idea.
Yeah,
We'll need your guys' approval of the proposal so we know what we're publishing.
so what, and that was deliberately not put as an action item, so a consensus. That's what we do. We ask our staff to prepare a budget based on this is what, and so I'm looking, is there objections to that? We would ask the staff to prepare a budget for the budget hearing based on this, and we can see that budget at the meeting beforehand as well.
We should, yep.
Right? Is that okay? Is everybody
So
comfortable
have
with?
we authorized you,
Yeah.
Tara, are gonna direct the staff to?
Yes. So everybody's in consensus with that. Okay, so we will take this sheet that they have and they will prepare a budget that will be presented to us in January. And then we'll have a budget hearing again, to approve it at the end of the meeting.
And the date of the budget we're working off of is today, 12/15/20, of the carry forward proposal date is this date that we're approving or agreeing to.
Yeah,
So 12, is this the 15th?
yeah.
22, okay.
All righty. So, it is 3:30. Shall we take a break? And come back and deal with the rest of our budget? All right, that sounds good.
And by budget, you mean agenda.
I'm sorry, yeah, I knew that. I knew, you knew that. Thank you very much. All right, we are gathered back together. Thank you. That was really rapid.
See, we can follow up.
Occasionally.
Selectively.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the adult programming specialist. And Lindsay, do you want to talk to that first?
So in the fiscal year 23 budget, we had a placeholder for a position called the adult programming specialist. And so before you is the newly created job description for that position. And this position will work very closely with our adult programming coordinator, and they will be working out of Hayden Library, and essentially they will help bolster our adult programming services for the community. Because right now, adult programming has just the coordinator, and then we have circulation specialists and supervisors that, along with their regular duties, they do a few hours a week of adult programming. So this will just create a bigger support network for those actions that happen at each of the libraries. And in this particular position, they will be helping plan and promote and develop programs and purchase supplies, get those sent out to the other libraries. They will help with coordinating our larger events like our summer reading performers, winter reading, and going to Seed and our music concert series that we have. So it'll just be a way to bolster that area within the library. And within the new strategic plan, like one of the first strategies is to develop better and more adult programming services. So this is right in alignment with that. And it's a 28-hour position, and we would just like to get it approved and posted and get it filled.
Okay, questions, comments? Just a question then on 28 hours, that's full-time, part-time, semi-time, how do we fit this in?
It is a part-time, non-benefited position. So, but it does receive PERC, which is, it's part of the retirement program, so that's good. Right now, you know, our adult coordinator works 32 hours, and so we thought that kind of position along with that position, it would work out well together. And I would hope that there'd be opportunity to grow both of those into a 40-hour position.
And that was we talked about career advancement. Why are people gonna stay with the library? How are we gonna provide opportunities? Folks come to know and love the library to stay working in it, and they can't afford to. So you're saying potentially both spots, the coordinator and the programming specialist, have career opportunity growth.
Assuming that we can move it forward in the budget, and assuming that, you know, right now, our coordinator is at the hours that she wants to work. And so, you know, there would be other factors to consider. And ideally, like, I think developing this job description, I see it as someone who is currently doing adult programming and maybe working 19 or 19 and a half hours and being able to work into this 28-hour position that would give them more creativity and a more earning capability as well.
And so you're saying that hypothetical person would just go to the 28 hours or would still have their old position and the 28 hours?
They would just have the 28-hour position. They wouldn't be able to hold both positions.
So would somebody have to fill in the vacancy of their old position then?
Yes.
Any more questions?
Yes, right under where it says adult programming specialist, it says FLSA designation. What does that say?
It's Fair Labor Standards Act, and so it's non-exempt, which means it's hourly, and they would be eligible to earn overtime or comp time.
But then that hourly is only based on agreement that can happen. It can't just be a runaway. You said hourly.
Right. Will you repeat your question?
My question is, we're still, right now, my notes show us a 28 hours time. But if some big program comes up and they have to work more hours, it can only be with the agreement of the staff, because that would cost us more money.
Exactly,
Wow.
right, and we would do our best to
Sure.
work within and stay within the 28 hours.
Thank you.
Oh, I can't turn mine on. Okay, so what happened to mine? Oh, there it is. See, there were just too many turned on. But we have to have an FLSA designation. Like, we, the employer, have to say whether this position is exempt or non-exempt. So that's what we're doing there. Meaning they could get overtime. They're not, it's not a salary position, it's hourly. Here's my comments about having, an additional person in adult programming, which is every time I read the board reports and I read all about all of the wonderful adult programs that have happened, and I wonder why I wasn't at them. And I just want there to be more of them. So, please do another paint and sip so I can come try to paint something.
If you sip a lot, you think better.
So, this seems great. I think we have the community support, for adult programs and having an additional body helping Twyla, I think is a good idea. One question I have is that it's designated, the title is adult programming specialist, but then when you read the job description, it says adult programming assistant. So, which one is it?
It is specialist, so thank you for catching that.
And it's so that, yeah, the first line of the first paragraph and the first line of the second paragraph both say assistant. The other kind of typo I saw is in the third line of the position summary, they'll, collection and will collaborate. Not sure why collaborate is capitalized. So,
Okay.
And I have one typo in that too. The first sentence, the adult program assistant will, the under direction. It's if he will work under the.
direction.
What?
I did not see.
The very first line, the adult
will
program
work
assistant.
The under, oh.
We'll work under the direct. Okay.
Boy, I couldn't, even when you read it, I couldn't.
That's because your brain just,
I know. Yeah.
makes up for things like that.
The bullet point at the top of page 2, with, it says, distinction S. It bothered me that there was a space under knowledge of or aptitude to learn when no other section had a space. And then, given that this is a position where we're giving preference to an individual with a bachelor's degree in a related field, I was curious to know what sort of, what field would relate to an adult programming specialist.
I mean,
Teacher.
well, for me, right, it could be education, it could be an arts degree, it could be graphic design, because they're gonna help promote, so it could be any number of fields. It could be something sciencey and they could do more STEM programs, so.
Gotcha. Well, I
I have a couple questions. Wait one sec. So was this included in our salaries for FY 23 already?
Yeah,
Okay, good.
yes, it's not, we're not asking for additional funds.
Okay.
This is already in the budget.
I remember that.
And was this job, was this adult programming specialist included in the compensation? So are we compensating within market rate?
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
it's one of our specialist positions that was ranked with the other specialists.
Oh, good. Okay, good. So we aren't gonna fall back into old bad habits with this new one. All right, I'm done.
I move that we approve the adult programming specialist job description, board draft 12-15-22 with changes.
Okay, it's been moved to accept the adult programming specialist position board draft 12-15-22 with changes. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you very much. Director recruitment update. When you guys came in, right before I left, said, oh, you're having a board meeting, here's an update. This, so you guys all have it on your email, and because it's gonna look a lot better on email. Because you can go and look at these, but here is an update of where, you know, the brochure got published. And it's out there, and here is an update of where she put it, and it's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is the update. Are there questions?
Should we review the timeline in a minute then?
Oh, yeah, I actually have that.
I think what we knew was this was gonna, we had to hurry up if everybody did, I saw a lot of good reviews going in. We posted now in 7 days, the 22nd. Now when we post it.
What is posted? I think
This job,
I think it went,
or is it closing then?
yeah,
Applications due January 22nd.
Right, right, applications are due.
So in another week, we'll learn if anybody out there is interested. And how many are interested.
Well, we have until the applications, are due on the 23rd, so we have quite a bit of January as well.
Oh, good. Well, hooray, I got another month. All right, I was still thinking it was December. Thank you. So then, once we have those, just a moment when you review the process, where we're at.
The next thing, I took this and these are the handwritten dates that I have in, so I'm sure, and the next item on the, would go down, it was the screen applications. That would be done around the 27th.
January.
And then the conducting semi-final interviews by Zoom would be the week of the 30th to February 3rd. And final interviews with the board will be February 13th or February 20th. Oh, I think she said February 17th.
17th, there was a President's Day weekend.
Yeah.
We were all having a pencil, and you can't just pencil it in, we have to ink it in, right? Because we're on duty to work with the
Yeah.
candidate. Thank you.
And I can ask, or, actually, anybody could ask her to, didn't she verify those dates though? I had them written down, and
Yes.
did
and
she
the
send
corrected-
them? She sent them, didn't she?
And the corrected, her summary of what modifications she made in a brochure. She emailed us with the new brochure attached and listed the things she's done, which was correct the dates of the February dates of the 17, 18, whatever it was you said it was.
I have been in communication with June about making sure we have our rooms and things reserved in case
Yeah.
they're needed. And so the 17th and 18th of February is correct, and they will be at Hayden Library.
Okay. Thanks.
Actually, in the brochure, on the very last page, selection process and timeline.
Yeah.
Updated?
Right there, this is the brochure, this is the final brochure,
Oh, it is?
yeah. So
First
if
round
you
interview.
go back and look at for your final brochure, there it is, right there.
Mhm. Final interview, 17 and 18.
Right.
First round, so I'm looking at page 8 or whatever the brochure is. The first round is when you three do the first round of reviewing, right?
Mhm.
First round interviews.
The first thing is to screen the application,
Well, that's February 1 through 3.
and then semifinal interviews.
Okay, now you do semifinal versus first round. Final interviews are September 17, 18.
Yeah. First round of interviews, right, that would be semifinal, right? And then the final interviews are in February.
And that's when we're all on duty to be
Mhm.
here and
Yes,
circle up, and that's when he.
send that, the new, or the updated one out? Because I didn't see it yesterday.
you didn't?
When did she send it out?
I just looked on my computer to see when we got that email, and it was December 9th.
Last Saturday. Just recently.
Oh.
I didn't see that either, Kate. I'll go back and look.
Yeah, I'll go back and look.
Mhm.
Did she send it to everybody?
Yes.
Did she? Because us who are on the committee may not have received it.
No, everybody got it,
Okay,
because everybody was included in looking at this brochure.
yes.
So finalizing it, was, right,
I might have just missed an attachment or something that was on there.
I was wondering if someone could make a copy of the brochure for me, because I have difficulties.
Here,
That's
pass
the new
this
one.
down to her.
So we're a bit rusty, but we went through this not that long ago. So,
Yes, we did.
I did see it, now that I think of it, I did see it,
so
the pig's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did see it.
The big
So
is
we'll
good.
have a meeting. Won't we have a meeting? What I recall happening is the applications came in. June made us this wonderful color-coded spreadsheet that had, you know, the ones that she thought looked like good candidates, but yet all the names were on there. And then we had a meeting and we talked about which ones were gonna be offered interviews. And then the search committee conducted those interviews and then it was discussed.
That would screen application. And
Right.
that will be with the search committee, yes.
And then we had another meeting where we kind of narrowed it down based on feedback and then people were invited back for final. Is that
Yes.
kind of how it's gonna go?
Yes,
We just need to keep track of those dates.
yes.
Okay.
I will try to I hear what you guys are asking. You'd like it a little more specific. I will do my best to get that.
Well, only because if we know that
Just
application,
don't go anyplace in January, okay? It's not that hard.
if we know that June is going to be sending us the spreadsheet with hopefully some candidates on it,
Oh.
fingers crossed, then it would seem like we're going to need some special meetings, but we're not gonna be able to set those without knowing June's availability, right?
Mhm. And some of them will just be the search committee, and at that point in time, you know, so we will, you know, but we will have to set some special meetings.
And that wouldn't be till after January 22nd.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Because then the next date after that is the first round of interviews, February 1st to 3rd.
Well, the next date of actually is screen applications. And that is what you're talking about where she color coded. And then
When did that happen?
that happens with the search committee on the 27th.
But it's not us.
committee.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was counting on. You guys get that one. Okay,
Okay, but what I would like to do is be given a moment I will take it upon myself to go back to her and ask her to please get really specific. If we can get really specific and send you guys dates. How does that sound? Specifying
yes,
who needs to be where, when.
yes.
All right. Okey doke. The next item on the agenda is the trustee continuing education, and I thought it would be good to do follow-up with Jim McNall, so I can do that, but then I did want to talk about the board packet. He brought up some interesting comments about concerning the board packet, and I would like to talk about that. That was my request, but I'd like to have any feedback that you might have from the presentation that he gave. Oh my gosh, you guys.
I really liked him. He was just a really pleasant person. I had no idea what to expect and, yeah, very informational.
Okay, go ahead.
I think we also, at the end, asked if we could have the PowerPoint presentation that he made on hand, if we had, if we wanted to.
I emailed that to you all already.
Eek, really, that's eek. I missed that one too. Okay.
I'll
No.
double check.
We should double check. It's now our job to double check it. seems to
Right,
me.
because I was looking for.
All right, so it's in there.
You have a date when you did it? Probably right after he was here.
I believe it was the day after the meeting because he gave it to me on a flash drive and I
Right.
had it immediately.
I saw you walk away with it.
So we had our meeting on December 1, so look around December 2.
Huh.
I know, that's how I feel. Oops. Okay, thank you, Lindsay, very much.
You did what you're supposed to do. Okay.
All right, the thing he brought up was the issue of the board packet. And, Lindsay did some research about board packets being online, and maybe you would like to talk a little bit to that.
Yeah, so I looked around to see what some other Idaho libraries do and if they post their entire board packet or what they include. And what I could find, so I looked at Boise, Meridian, and Idaho Falls, and they have their board packet available for the public on their website, but it does not include any library reports or photos of programs that go along with those library reports. It is the agenda, it is the minutes, the financial statements, and the the business part of the packet is what is posted. So I wanted to put that out there as a possibility, because if we post our library reports on our website, we will have to not include photos with children. And we'll have to make sure staff don't include personal information such as going on vacation and things like that, that would, be identifiable. So we would need time to work with staff to get them to understand what we're asking for.
So I addressed that specifically to him. And he said it's all public information. And then I got quite confused because so if somebody asks for, those reports, does somebody have to go back and redact all of them before they get sent out as public information? I mean, it's kind of like
because historically, board packets have been an internal document, and so if someone wanted them, they would fill out a public records request, and so we would probably work with the attorney to redact information that wasn't of public access.
So should we be producing things that aren't listed as exempt from a public records request? Do you know what I mean? I mean, they don't follow under that, and yet we're not following the procedures. It just seems
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Who's asking for this to even be posted online, or
What?
the packet? Is
So
the public asking for this?
What has happened is the packet has been handed out.
To board members.
To the public, or at least parts of the packet have been handed out to the public. And, so the point is, as long as other libraries are doing it, that seems like a very good thing for us to do. That makes it very transparent about what's going to be happening. And then that way, everybody has it. There's not a question of just a few people get it, that might have a friend on a board or whatever. And so.
So like you're saying a trustee has been handing out
That has happened,
their
yes.
copies
Yes.
to somebody
That, I
else.
don't know how else it would have gotten. So, yeah, I don't know how else that would have happened. I don't know what happened. I just know that parts of our board packet, which just came to us, it became apparent that they were, that the public had access to them. So my question is, especially in order to be transparent, why don't we put them online so everybody has access to them? And especially since other libraries do that, and I knew other libraries did that, and our sticking point has always been those.
Confidential.
The sticking point it's always been the board reports from the library, because they have photos of kids.
So really, you could just do the rest of the packet without that.
Yeah, that would, that's certainly the board reports are simply to let the board members know what's going on in a library. They just report on.
Can I ask a question, and maybe it's be helpful, maybe it wouldn't be helpful, but I guess what's coming up for me is I think what we've identified is that if we're not the keepers of the records, right? Us, the trustees are not, if a public records request comes in, it goes through properly and it is it's responded to legally in accordance with public disclosure laws. And so I think the issue is that if it's an internal document that was not intended to be disclosed, then a trustee should not be disclosing it. But yet we don't, right? So if this has happened, this is what we're trying to address. So I guess I would like to know from our legal counsel, maybe we should solicit input, because I think my question to Jim McNall was, but a lot of times our board packet includes drafts. Those drafts don't ever become policies. Oftentimes drafts aren't subject to disclosure. But maybe they should be disclosed. I have no ideas. I feel like we're kind of just really out of our depth in this discussion. I think it was a good talking point to bring up with Jim McNall, but I don't know that we got an answer from him as to what to do. But I think what we did learn is that parts of our board packet maybe ought not be disclosed. But we don't know.
Well, the other thing too is I think it's only fair to the public that they see what's going to be coming up, even in even a draft.
Well, and I'm not saying I'm opposed to that. I just don't, I would like, input from our attorney. The other thing that's in the board reports, sometimes there are patron names, member names. And I don't think there are privacy concerns associated with that as well. It's not just the images, there can be content.
So what about this, guys? What about with the idea of putting, since we have so many other libraries in Idaho, putting their board packets online? And since it would be nice, actually, in terms of transparency, for people to be really clear about what's being talked about, what about if we ask our staff to ask the attorney about the issues that have come up today, and what things we can put online and what not, and have them come back and say, this is how we could do that. What do you think?
I'd like to pursue trying to get as much information as we can to the public with respect to the privacy issues and photographic issues. And, you know, I reciprocated that earlier today. I thought, man, there's some great things and great stories happening in our reports from the branches. But if it has used somebody's name and they didn't know they were going to be quoted and sent out in the world, then that's incorrect. And I want to be sure we don't do that. On the other hand, some of those human interest stories are what really tug at us all for why we come to these meetings, is to help make those kinds of activities available. So we need to learn what the other libraries are doing. They must have been through this already and figured out what they.
She just told us what they're doing.
They're sending it out.
They put it online. That's a very common
Right,
practice.
but the question is what parts of it can.
Yeah,
go
she did,
online.
and she said.
Right, so they don't put like the library report in there.
And that's
with
the one that
photo.
I think is the most interesting one to tell the public what
Right,
we're doing.
they do include drafts, but they have the watermark.
They should be
draft.
anyway. I need that on my record. Yep, so that part's okay. Other agencies that I've served with, Historical Society, NIC, Public Television do send out their public meeting agendas and list the topics that are going to be discussed so that.
We certainly send out the agendas. I mean, we always have agendas, but
Is
the
it
board
posted
packets
online?
themselves. Yes.
So people can know what we're going to talk about. They may not know the contents of the subject that we're talking about. That's a dilemma that we need to be respectful of privacy about.
And I don't know, I mean, the board packets for the reports, the board reports, they're lengthy. I can't imagine that many people in the public wanting to sit there and read all of that. I read it. We all
We're
read
supposed
it.
to,
We
yeah.
read it. But I mean, I don't know if the public would be that interested, like you're thinking.
And I don't know that either. I think our goal is it's available. If you choose not to read it, that's okay too, but we've made it available. And I don't know, it surprises me, folks, what they read and come to me with questions about on the board. So I don't know. I think the idea of doing it is worth exploring. How much money we would spend on legal counsel to find it out.
Well, I mean, I'm willing to walk that back, particularly because of something you just said, Lindsay, which is the making it very clear that it's a draft. That was the part that was bothersome to me because I could see or envision a scenario where something is splayed out and shared that we have done something when at the end of the day, the little thing that at the top that it was a draft is completely overlooked. And, you know, and so it's just been misrepresented. But if drafts have a watermark on them that, you know, it's impossible to miss the fact that it's a draft, I'm much more comfortable with that. So I'm not insistent that you contact our attorney and get their input. I am comfortable doing what other libraries in Idaho are doing based on your research, so.
And I would like to do more research, and I would like to also just reach out to our attorney just to make sure we're doing the right thing. That's what I would feel comfortable with.
We okay with that?
At least this board member said to have explored some more. When we asked Lindsay to do that, it's taking away time from something else she's gotta do, so I gotta keep my priorities straight on helping how we ask you to spend your time. I think the transparency is important to do, and whatever way we can do it. And Vanessa, you're right, we'll probably be redeemed, nobody will read them, but we've had them out there. And for me, that's a comfort level of sharing the information. So we get a report back next month.
Yes. We'll bring it back. We'll bring it back in January. That sound good? All righty. You guys, we're just rushing through. Facilities updates.
Yes, okay. So here at Post Falls, we have been making progress with the children's room remodel. And so this was mentioned.
Children's room remodel here at Post Falls?
Yes.
Okay.
This was mentioned several months ago, and we're using donations to do the renovation, but we have met and are on the verge of having final plans with our architect for what the space would look like. And then the next phase would be to go to the city for approval and get permits and go out for bid. And then before all of that, obviously come to the board for final approval. But we would be making a new office that would be more approachable for our members, and it would be more forward facing. And we would be changing the carpet and the paint and making a clearer line of sight so that the shelves are shorter and not as tall. So it's a more safe and welcoming space. And then along with that, there is the computer lab remodel possibility here at Post Falls as well. And right now we have a computer lab that I want to say maybe has like 15 desks in it. And what we're going to do is divide that into 3 spaces and create a smaller computer lab for our customers that still want a desktop computer experience. And then we would have the other half divided into a staff office, and the other half would be a study room for the public, because we have gotten a lot of requests for additional study room space. And that would be money that would be paid with CARF funds. So again, I would need to come back in the future once we're closer to a final drawing and moving forward and get board approval to use CARF funds for that. And then one final thing about Post Falls is I believe we are like 97% done with all of the lights that have been installed. So like this room has brand new lights. I don't know if anyone noticed that, but they've been working steadily, and I think we're on the final stretch of that.
Madam Chair, if we have time yet today to walk us through the physical, we're meeting here today. So can we see some of the things that you're waving your arms about, the children's thing? Or afterwards, at the meeting ends, it helps me to see the areas we're working
on. The children's room remodel already has money set aside for it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Does it look like the money that's been set aside is going to cover it?
That is what, so we believe so. We have a little bit over $100,000. And so that is what the plan is.
And that's been donated, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's donated money. So that doesn't come out of our budget at all.
Yes.
I mean, it comes out of our budget.
We are working to stay in that budget, but as everyone knows, prices and services are increasing
astronomically.
Yes.
So the computer lab remodel is a project that has that, so that money would come from CARF funds and that, but that seems to be a next remodel decision that needs to happen in facilities. It's a priority.
Yes, and ideally we would approach both of these at the same time so that we can use the same contractor and, not have a project happening now and then one in 6 months. So we want to consider it as one, but also separate, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that sounds like there might be some cost savings there. I don't know. Certainly I can't imagine Post Falls not needing another staff office.
Right.
Yeah. And it's really heartwarming to know that people want more study rooms. That's really good. And then, the other one was the lab and the computer lab. And I'm like, why do we do that? You know, but apparently people do like their desktop computers.
What, do you have a staff member in mind that would be in the office space near the computer lab? Because as soon as you started talking about changing the computer lab, like I immediately thought of, well, you've got a help desk person, right? Like, that's gonna help with computer issues, maybe, maybe not.
So the original space, the purpose was to have a place for Michelle or whoever was in the admin assistant to sit so they could do exit interviews and have privacy with those sort of HR issues. And so that is where it originated from. And then I think we would just see if there's some shuffling around and who might finally end up in that space. But
There's no doubt they need some more office space.
And we already have a safe room here, right?
yes,
And so this is not constructed to do that. It's Hayden, it's still short, the safe room,
yes.
which to me stays pretty high on the list just because you need to have that protection. Okay.
All right. Anything else?
Oh, and just the mention of snow removal. As everyone knows, we've had a lot of snow and we're getting it cleared, we're doing de-icing, but if it continues to snow this much, we might be, over budget in that category, because it's expensive.
So who removes the snow from 9th Street or Avenue or whatever? That thing is a mess. And that is one of our does anybody remove it at all?
The city.
Does the city do it?
I mean,
it's gotta be their last priority.
Yep.
But it is one of our main in and out places.
I understand.
Nobody cares. Is that what you're saying?
It's priority, and I don't know that that's their.
So we could, even if we wanted to, we probably couldn't do it. Probably would be like insurance.
And very costly.
Yeah.
Oh,
Especially now.
Why not ask, have you visited with the city about it to alert them to the need as an entrance to a public? Sometimes they forget.
I can check on that.
Sure, all they can do is say no,
Yeah.
but sometimes
Maybe
highlighting
Randy could.
to them it's an entrance to a highly, an active area. It's not just a residential street that dead ends at the end of the street sort of thing. And that's the priorities are the business people first, traffic first, and then business, and then
Well,
residential.
there are the businesses over there. And I
But they have
bet
access off of, anyway, highlight it to them.
they do.
They don't have to come in as far. I think they can, you can.
Across
Anyway,
there.
so,
All right.
and you're right, there's a lot more snow coming, and it costs more this year to plow because the fuel's more. And it's ongoing. And it's the overtime during the 4 o'clock in the morning plowing time that costs the most. Yep.
Anything else?
No.
Okay. Legislative updates?
I'll
Anything?
comment just a minute on that because the legislature met to format their configuration this year, the first part of December. The legislature, half of the legislature are new folks. There's never been this many new folk in the legislature, I don't know, in the last 50 years. So there's a lot of folks who can learn more about libraries as well as all the other things that the state is supposed to administer. On JFAC, there'll be new chairman there. And JFAC's the Joint Finance Appropriation Committee that allocates the money to all areas, operations in the state. 2 new chairmen there, and half of that committee is new. So there's just a lot of education that we have a chance to do too, to highlight for our local legislators the value of some of the things that we're doing up here. The chairman of the Education Committee, and that probably is where libraries will be telling their story. In House will be probably a friend of libraries. In the Senate, that's new people and not as likely. Same thing with telecommunications. There's just a lot of churning that, I think it's gonna be an interesting session from what I hear from folks who are in Boise. And an opportunity for us as citizens to have our input, because these are new legislators who may not realize what you think you know before you go to Boise and what you learn when you get there are two different things, and it should be. That's how we work. But it will be a challenging time. Which is a euphemism for, hang on, here we go.
Okay, anybody else? All right, and community announcements, do you have anything?
No, not this, no.
Okay, the next item is public comment overview. Do we have anybody who wants to talk about something? And then we can also tie that into discussion of future agenda requests if needed.
I do.
Yes.
This goes back, I think, to October, because we've had so many meetings since then. And there was never an appropriate time to deal with it because we were so busy. But I believe it was in October. It happened during public comment, and a patron got up and expressed that she had or was going to check out books that she didn't find appropriate and keep them. And I found that incredibly disturbing. It's theft of material and services. You wouldn't do that at City Hall or any other governmental agency. To my knowledge, it's only happened one other time, and it was before, when this was a municipal library. I know how that was handled. I'm curious, I guess, towards staff and whether anybody else is concerned how that's handled.
I mean, it would be handled like any other individual who has books checked out that they never return, and it would be, you know, in their account, and they would be billed for the items. And if they don't pay for them, then their account would go to collections after a certain point. And, you know, if there is continued demand for the items that are long checked out like that, we would order additional copies.
Okay.
Anybody else have anything?
I lost track of an agenda, but I wanted to highlight, maybe some of you saw, the Spokane paper talked about Liberty Lake Library delivering help to homebound patrons. And I don't know if you saw that article, but it was a concept that, we might be looking at. I don't know how we can afford it, but the concept was good about folks who can't get out. How do you get library services? They sent their tax dollars in the same way. And I don't know what we would want to do with it, but I was intrigued with the concept that Liberty Lake at least is doing something with it. Maybe we can learn more.
I'm gonna keep this to just the public comment time. So I had something to add to what Michelle was saying. I do remember that. What I got the impression is that, what was being said is that books would be removed without being checked out at all. Have we been seeing that kind of thing happening?
I don't have an answer for that right now, but I can speak to others and report back
Okay.
if that's what you'd like me to do.
That would be up to the board. Is that something that you want looked at?
I would, just because it's a budgeting factor. If the books are gone and we believe we should have them, then we need to spend more money to buy them again and again. Is that what happens? Or at least you signal to us, because we're not in charge of what you choose to have in the library, but we are in charge of the money spent to do it. Some highlight from staff on it's happening.
Maybe in the director's report? Yeah, we could find out if there are, if a lot of books are going missing without being checked out. Okay. Anything else? Public comment overview.
I just want to make sure that the board receives a copy of the petition that was delivered at the last meeting and then followed up on this meeting with additional signatures. I'm not sure that I, had gotten a copy of that.
Okay, anything else? All right, then under discussion of future agenda requests, Rochelle sent me a request today, that I thought we just talk about. She said I request that the interim director or the director answer the public questions about the materials policy to be put on a future agenda. So, some of the things we heard probably in, do you want to expand on that request? So this is what Rochelle is asking, is that this be put on the agenda, and that's what we're doing right now. We're talking about discussion of future agenda requests. And so let's see, and what it is, and that, do you guys want to put this on the agenda?
Yeah, I've just had a lot of public ask me, and I've directed them to Lindsay, we were told to do. But it just seems like so many people want to know that it would probably just be a good idea to answer it in a public setting, like, how many books have been removed, and, of course, well, because of the new section in the materials policy that says that, basically we're gonna comply with the 18, Idaho statute 18, 15, 13, 14, and 15. So people just want to know, how is it going to be implemented? How many books have been taken off the shelf? How are we complying with that new part of our materials policy?
So what is the discussion here? If we think that this is a good idea?
To put this, put a discussion of this on the agenda.
Oh, I think that's probably important.
Okay.
Also, I would assume the public would want to know if having requests from books, that come in from like Spokane, if they can come through our library in the same manner. That would fall under not being in our library. Can they be brought through our library from?
So what you're saying is that a patron would request a book from another library, and we would make a decision about whether or not they could receive it?
Well, no, if it fell under not being acceptable under the Idaho code that she just said, can that book still even come through our library? I mean, I'm sure people would want to know that.
Are you speaking of books that we get through the CIN Library Cooperative? Are you speaking of books that are borrowed from across the country through interlibrary?
Everything, yeah, everything, just in general coming through the CIN libraries. If they fall under that category of not being acceptable in the children's section.
There are so many issues at hand in this. It's not simple.
I know.
At all. And perhaps the point of the discussion needs to be highlighting all of the aspects of this. And rather than having the director make a did we want to have a discussion about it first? And then we can ask the director to have, when is our policy violated? I guess is what I want to know. When do we know that the policy has been violated? How do we know that? That kind of discussion.
Is that what you were thinking? Yeah. Trying to be sure.
Yeah, I guess, so we're having a discussion now whether we're gonna put it on, ask Lindsay at a later date to
I'm trying to understand.
elaborate.
I'm not certain what we're asking her at this point, and I guess I'd like to have a discussion about, to have some real clarity on what we're asking her to do. Then I'm happy to put that on the agenda.
I'm confused. So you're saying you could put on the agenda that we have a discussion
How
about
do
what
we,
we
okay,
asked.
yeah, because I will put it this way. Legally speaking, people are very concerned about things that we have that might violate Idaho code. But the way that is found out is through a court of law. And so anybody here that doesn't, that makes a decision about that, that needs to go to a court of law in order to decide whether it violates that code.
Well, the attorney, Mrs. Burton, she, because I asked her that specifically.
What do you hear?
Do you remember that?
So what I
And
want,
she said there's certain books that you would not need to go to a court of law that would fall under that category.
okay,
How do we know that?
okay, what we're doing is having that discussion. What I'd like to know is, shall we put that discussion on the agenda?
Yes.
Well, I'm sorry, not to beat a dead horse, but what discussion? The board is involved in policy. We have now set the policy and therefore staff are to carry out that policy. So I am struggling with how this is a board issue. The board has passed the policy. We're not going to nitpick staff on implementing policy. They are autonomous professionals. We were given a draft. We discussed the draft at length. We passed the policy and the policy is now effective. If there is a member of the public that believes that the policy has been violated, then that's where they are to submit the request for reconsideration so that staff can review and determine if it violates policy. This is not a discussion for our board. That's the way I view it. This is not policy making. We have passed that.
Okay, so we are back to, simply asking the director to make a statement. That's what the request was. The director answered the public's questions about public policy.
I don't have an issue with that being on our agenda. If our director would like to respond at a public meeting to those questions, then I think that's appropriate. I'm just saying when we're over here saying, is this a board discussion? No, I don't believe it is a board discussion. But if we want to include a portion of our public meeting devoted to allowing the director the floor to respond to the concerns that have been raised at meetings, then absolutely, that's appropriate.
Okay.
Yep, and that's more of what I was trying to get at, so that it can be cleared up, because I know the public, some are happy with us putting this in the policy, but they want to know how it's actually getting done. So that's what I was talking about for us discussing it, not us nitpicking because I understand that that's on their end now.
Okay, all right, that sounds good. We
So
can put that on.
Madam Chair, the email that you sent to our library director, because it was an operations kind of a question, not a policy question, right?
There were aspects of that were definitely operational, and I am more than happy to make a statement just to get clarification on what the public may or may not be expecting from the library.
Okay.
Okay, so we can put that on the agenda for next time. Everybody okay with that? All right. Anything, we have the other two items under that board self-evaluation request. Are you still there, Judy?
I was gonna say probably not, because Jim McNeil talked a little bit about some of the things I was concerned about.
Okay.
And coincidentally, yesterday's newspaper has a story about the Coeur d'Alene Library Board establishing some policy issues for them and rules of what they call themselves, ethics policy, pretty similar to ours, for how you deal with things. And I guess maybe sending that out to everybody would be helpful for us to know where we're pretty much consistent. Because I think for most of our library users, they can go to any library they want. We want them to, whatever library is handy, provide what they need, that's fine. So that was part of what I was trying to do as a board member, is be sure I know what the right protocol is for us, me as a member and board members. And when the public asks me questions about, yes, this we can do, this we can't, privacy is certainly critical. the request for information about what I checked out, for instance, I don't think you answer those. You answer the one to know we don't release information. Is that correct?
Will you ask your question again? I'm
Sure.
sorry, I didn't follow
If
that.
the, neither can I. The idea, if somebody wants to know what I checked out.
Right, that is not something that we would reveal. That's private information. And if we would reveal it, well, people, you can add people to your account to have access, like your family member or something, but it's your private information, so we would
Which is
not.
true for every patron member, not
Yes.
just board members. This is
Oh,
standard
yes,
policy.
everyone, yes.
How often do we purge our files of the records of what I've checked out?
I would have to report back on that.
Because my understanding is some libraries at the end of the day,
I thought that's what we did. That'll be interesting to find out.
because I think it would help our patrons know too, patron members, wherever they are, that their records are really guarded fiercely for their comfort level with using the library and checking out whatever affects their needs. And it's not for us to even know or manage.
So are you asking for something to be placed on the agenda, or are you just?
I kind of morphed from our board self-evaluation to testing out, not one just for board. Yes, I would ask for, at your convenience timeline, a review of the library procedures to protect privacy information. It's not quite the right wording, but the concept.
And we could just, you could just do that in a board report, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
fine.
that's what I was
All right.
thinking.
Remind us again.
Okay. And then the personnel policy manual request will be scheduled after the new director is hired. Okay, so set special and regular meeting dates. Judy, you said that you cannot.
I'm sorry, I'm out of town on January 19th.
Okay. Do we want to look at our calendar? It has been our, it has
How
been our,
hard is it to move it? I leave on the 10th and I'm not back till 25th. So
Oh,
that's a chunk. That's right. It may not be realistic.
that we would just leave it.
Unless there's somebody else who's out of town, we need to factor that.
Is everybody else going to be here for the meeting?
Yes. So if you've got a majority, go for it. Yep.
Yes, are you gonna be here? Yes, yes, okay, that sounds good. We'll just leave that there, and I think
Okay.
at this point in time.
Wait. So before we move on,
Yeah.
I had postponed my motion, but if we're not changing the day of that meeting, then I would call for a vote on my previous motion.
Okay, well, let's say that the previous motion was, it has been moved to have our board hearing on January 19th at 5:30 PM. That's our budget hearing.
It's actually already on here, so.
Did we get it right the first time? What?
I didn't think we had to have a motion for it, and so it's on here.
Oh,
But-
I see. Okay, I got you.
Budget
got you.
hearing.
So I need, so that's why we're having that. So it's been, let me say this more clearly. It's been moved that we have our budget hearing to enter our carry forward into our budget on January 19th, 2023 at 5:30 PM. Any discussion?
I won't be here, but I'm glad you're getting it done. I agree.
Okay, that sounds good. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? No. Okay, so there's that, and it doesn't sound like there's anything else, and this is a miraculous.
Did we do the tour?
Yeah.
Of the facilities? I would ask the board to take the time to look at what we're gonna be talking about.
Okay,
I
that
know
sounds
it's-
good. This is part of our facilities, and so
Yeah.
we will just walk around and then we'll come back and adjourn.
Well, I actually have I'm really glad that we finished early because I have some.
Oh, you-
So we don't, anyway, I will opt out of the tour, but we're
Okay.
not going to adjourn. Is that right?
we can adjourn and then just go on the tour.
Yeah, because I would opt out too, because last meeting, I had a tour of what they were gonna do in the kids section and
Oh,
everything.
did you? Okay, I did not, so I need one.
That's
All right.
true, good point.
I move we adjourn.
Okay, it's been moved that we adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye. Let the meeting note show we finished early, right?
Thank you very much to the public who came and stayed.